There are moments in history that don't feel like discovery. They feel like intrusion, because some things were never meant to survive. A library burned by a volcano, yet still readable. A sacred text that looks like one hand, but isn't. A lost empire speaking in a language no one could hear. Images carved into the earth at a scale no one on the ground could see. And a book so strange it still resists explanation. By every modern assumption, these should be gone. And yet, they're coming back. Not through magic, not through guesswork, but through something far stranger. We are finally learning how to look, and once you see what's been hiding in plain sight, the past stops feeling distant, it starts feeling unfinished. So start with fire. In 79 AD, Mount Vesuvius didn't just bury Herculaneum, it erased it in seconds. A violent surge of superheated gas swept through the city, hot enough to destroy wood, cloth, even human bodies almost instantly. By everything we understand about physics and combustion, nothing delicate should have survived. And yet, inside a Roman villa, something did. A library, not preserved in the way we would hope, but transformed into something almost unrecognizable. Hundreds of scrolls were carbonized, compressed into blackened cylinders, as fragile as ash. For centuries they sat in silence. If you tried to open one, it would crumble in your hands. And here's the contradiction. The same event that should have erased these texts protected them. These are the only surviving library scrolls from the ancient Roman world. But for generations they were unreadable, black ink, fused into black, carbonized papyrus, effectively invisible, even under magnification. So how do you read something you can't open and can't see? The breakthrough didn't come from archaeology, it came from a shift in perspective. Instead of touching the scrolls, scientists scanned them using high-resolution X-rays, building a detailed 3D map of every internal layer. At first, it seemed like nothing had changed. The letters were still hidden. Until artificial intelligence began searching for something no human eye could detect. Microscopic texture differences in the papyrus fibers, subtle distortions left behind by ink, and slowly, impossibly, words began to appear, layer by layer, line by line. Not epic myths, not secret prophecies, philosophy, reflections on pleasure, taste, and how to live well. That's the first reversal. We expected destruction, we found a voice. And that raises a question that still hasn't been answered. If this survived, how much else is still waiting? Because sometimes the mystery isn't in what's hidden, it's in what looks perfect. When the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered, one manuscript stood out immediately, the Great Isaiah Scroll. Nearly complete, stretching over 7 meters, written with such consistency that experts believed it had to be the work of a single scribe. The flow was seamless, the style never broke, it looked unified. But what if that unity was an illusion? Modern analysis used AI to examine thousands of repeated letters, measuring tiny variations in curvature, pressure, and stroke formation, details far beyond human perception. What it found was unexpected. Halfway through the scroll, the writing changes, not visibly, not obviously, but measurably. 2 scribes, one continuous identity, that's the second reversal. The closer we look, the more disciplined the work becomes. One scribe didn't simply continue the text. He adapted his writing so precisely that even experts missed the transition for decades. Which leads to a deeper question. Was this about copying text? Or preserving authority so perfectly that individual identity disappeared entirely? And if that level of precision existed then, how many other single-author works are anything but? But even handwriting assumes one thing, that we can understand the language. What happens when we can't? For decades, inscriptions from the Kushan Empire posed exactly that problem. Found across Central Asia, carved into stone and stamped onto coins, the symbols were recognizable enough to study, but impossible to read. There was no translation, no known equivalent, no entry point. An entire civilization, speaking into silence. So how do you decode a language without knowing a single word? You don't start with meaning, you start with patterns. Modern analysis, compared recurring symbol sequences across multiple inscriptions, identifying likely names, titles, and repeated structures common to royal texts. Gradually, connections formed. Sounds aligned with symbols. Structure revealed meaning. And just like that, the silence began to break. That's the third reversal. The language wasn't lost because it was unknowable. It was lost because no one had the tools to see its structure. And that opens another question. If pattern recognition can recover a language, what else are we overlooking simply because we're not seeing it the right way? Because sometimes the message isn't written at all. It's carved into the world itself. In the Nazca Desert of Peru, massive figures stretch across the landscape. Monkeys, spiders, long straight lines that seem to cut endlessly through the terrain. From the ground, they appear fragmented, almost random. But from above, they resolve into deliberate, controlled images. And here's the contradiction. A civilization without flight created designs that only fully make sense from the sky. So who were they for? Some theories imagined messages to gods. Others saw astronomical maps or ritual pathways. But these geoglyphs were created using simple techniques, removing dark surface stones to reveal lighter soil beneath. Simple method, extraordinary execution. And the deeper we look, the stranger it becomes. AI-assisted analysis of terrain data has revealed additional geoglyphs. Smaller, fainter, often positioned along slopes or pathways, invisible to the human eye at ground level. This wasn't just art, it was a system, a landscape designed with intention, movement, and meaning. Which leads to an uncomfortable question. How do you control scale and alignment so precisely without ever seeing the full image? And if that wasn't enough, consider what happens when we finally read everything. In ancient Mesopotamia, thousands of clay tablets survive, carrying one of the oldest writing systems in human history. For years, we assumed these texts held profound secrets. Rituals, myths, hidden knowledge preserved across millennia. But when AI-assisted translation began scaling up, the picture changed. Most of these texts are not grand or mystical. They are ordinary: receipts, contracts, school exercises, complaints, a customer arguing over poor quality metal, a student repeating lines, making mistakes. That's the fourth reversal. We expected mystery. We found familiarity. And suddenly the ancient world doesn't feel distant anymore. It feels human, which might be the most unexpected discovery of all, except for one thing, one text that still refuses to resolve. The Voynich manuscript, filled with strange illustrations, plants that don't quite exist, diagrams that hint at science or medicine, and a script that no one has been able to definitively decode. For over a century, many assumed it was meaningless, a hoax. Random symbols arranged to look convincing. But modern analysis tells a different story. Studies of its internal structure show consistent statistical patterns, repetition, distribution, and organization that behave like real language. Not random, not noise, something structured. That's the fifth reversal. The more rigor you apply, the harder it becomes to dismiss. So now we're left with something far more unsettling than mystery. A burned library that wasn't destroyed. A perfect script hiding two minds. A lost language waiting for pattern recognition. A desert filled with images no one could fully see. A civilization speaking in everyday voices. And a manuscript that still resists us. We can explain more than ever before. We can scan deeper, compare faster, detect patterns no human could see alone. But the explanations don't make these things smaller. They make them sharper. Because these people didn't break the laws of nature. They understood them through patience, repetition, and observation at a level we are only now beginning to recognize again. And maybe that's the real revelation, not what they built, but how they thought. Because the question isn't just, how did they do this? It's something more unsettling. What did they understand that we stopped paying attention to? And if they could achieve this, then what else are we still underestimating? Maybe history was never silent. Maybe we just didn't know how to listen.